been great this past week. It's been going by so fast, but I'm thankful. I love being busy. I love being busy. It makes the time go by fast, and it keeps your mind going. And it feels like when things are slow, like life's kind of dragged a little bit. And I like being busy, and I like to stay busy. And grateful for all the work that's been done this past week. Hope you all are doing well. Great to see you all tonight. Let's go to Lord in prayer. And Brother Carl, great to see you. Can you open the service in prayer?
Dear Father, Lord, we thank you for you come here. We are thy word, Father. I pray and ask for a blessing and everyone. God, you and him speak to us. That my word, that's reference in Jesus.
Amen. Let's all remain standing. We have hymn 328. To God be the glory. 328.
To God be the glory, great things He hath done. To God be the world that gave us His Son. Who gave His life and atonement for sin, and opened the blind gate that all may go in. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the people rejoice. Look up to the Father, through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory, great things He hath done. Perfect redemption, the purchase of blood, to every believer, the promise of God. The blood is the fragrant who truly believes, the pardon from Jesus, the pardon receives. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the people rejoice. Come to the Father, through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory, great things He hath done. Great things He hath done us, great things He hath done, and great are rejoicing through Jesus the Son. And purer and higher and greater will be our wonder, our transport, when Jesus we see. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the earth hear His voice. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Let the people rejoice. To the Father, through Jesus the Son, and give Him the glory, great things He hath done.
Amen. We receive it. We had a great business forum dinner last night. I appreciate Mr. Steve James coming to speak. And talk about some good insight he had regarding as far as leadership and servant leadership. And it had new folks, new business that work for representatives as well. We had a representative for Congress, Warren Davidson. That's the name. Thank you. Representative for him came and showed up, and I'm thankful for that. And some other ones came as well. I'm very excited about that. And I think he was Ben Thaler. I think Taylor. You say Thaler. I know there's a TH in there. But he was very excited, amazed at the fact that something like this being started. They'll connect Christian business owners together and all that. He was absolutely excited about that. He wants to be there for every month that we have it. And words are getting out. I appreciate the folks spreading the word to help us with that. And I'm thankful for those that showed up for all that as well. And we'll be able to keep this going as well. I think it's a great platform for folks to get together. At the same time, introduce them to the work that's happening here at the church.
Amen.
And I want them to all know what we're doing here at the church as well. The ministries that we're having, what we're trying to do for the community of reaching folks for Christ. And that way they can help us with that as well. And very grateful for folks who were able to go see this past week. We were trying to make it back. And we didn't make it back in time. The ladies were out here waiting for the church door to be open. Sorry for that. Hopefully they didn't wait that long. But I saw them up here waiting for us, for Brother Travis and I. We made it back. Hopefully you didn't stand out there too long. Was it only just 30 minutes? Is that it? But as you can see here, pray for some of our church family. Continue to pray for Brother Tim and Miss Judy. I went to see them over in Arcanda and same with the Beatty family as well. And continue to pray for Miss Jennifer as well that came, and pray for all the kids that she has. A lot to undertake, a lot to care for. And you could be a blessing help to her. I know that could be a huge help. But we're grateful. Continue to pray for the folks that you don't see. I think of Miss Rose that's not feeling well. I think Miss Genesis and Brother Matthew, the Grillios as well. And as you can look, just pray for folks that aren't here, and just reach out to them. We'll have our ushers come forward, take up our offering here. And we have Mr. World Traveler here. That's all right. I'm grateful he's here with us tonight. We missed Brother Carl, and I was just thinking about him this past week. I wonder where he's going to be, but I'm glad he's here tonight. Glad he's here tonight. Right, exactly. And I'll have Brother Leo pray for this offering, please.
Dear Lord, we thank you that you take care of us. Thank you for the many provisions you give us, daily blessings, and that you help us as we get back to youth so we can help missionaries. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please take your songbooks and stand with me. Stand number 88, double A's. Open my eyes and I may see.
Open my eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Placed in my hands the wonderful key that shall unlast and set me free. Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, my will to see. Open my eyes and look at me. Spirit, lead on. Open my ears that I may hear voices of truth, God's endless clear, and while the rain will fall on my ear, everything false shall disappear. Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, my will to see. Open my ears. Open my mouth and let me bear. Lord, with my children, God will share. Silently now I wait for thee. Ready, my God, my will to see. Open my heart and illumine me. Spirit
All right, I want you to go with me to Proverbs chapter 20. Proverbs chapter 20. This phrase here in this song caught my attention here. I kind of made me rejoice that one day will disappear. Verse 2, in hymn 88, that open my eyes that I may see. Open my ears that I may hear voices of truth thou sendest clear. And while the wave notes fall on my ear, everything false shall disappear. I can't wait for just the day where false things will just disappear. With all these horrible news and things that are happening in our country just fade away when Jesus shall appear. I'm very excited for that day. I'm tired of hearing all these different news that are out there for people. Absolutely amazes me the things that are happening right now and happening publicly and boldly. Like to say that boldly in front of people. Television, news, radio, it's boldly happening. And you talk about, I just can't wait for the day the Lord sets everything to where how He wants to do things. I know President Biden is absolutely for all the things that are happening, the teaching, transgenderism, and all this. And you know what? We're not. We're not. We love folks, but we're not for all of that. And it's absolutely ridiculous with all that they're trying to push down in schools, the children. It just amazes me. We love folks, but we're just not for what he's trying to do with kids. The things he's trying to force parents. But I'm getting off topic here. Go with me to Proverbs chapter 20. Proverbs chapter 20. If it wasn't for the call, the Lord's call to preach, to be the pastor, I would definitely enter the political world. Definitely. Who knows? Maybe there's some future in all of that. I heard of a pastor has done that. And I thought it was interesting. I don't know how, that must have been a busy schedule to be a representative, a mayor, and then a pastor as well. It's hard, Bill. Just, I'm sure God give him grace and strength to go through all that and navigate each world. But I'm just thankful the Lord put us here, allow us to be able to serve him here. But Proverbs chapter 20, let's look at verse 23. We'll look at a few more verses. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 23. It says, "Diver weights are an abomination unto the Lord, and a false balance is not good." Go with me to Proverbs chapter 11, and we're going to make our way to Proverbs chapter 23. Proverbs chapter 11, read a few more verses. Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 1, it says, "A false balance is abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight." Look at chapter 16. Chapter 16 with me. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 11. It says, "A just weight and balance are the Lord's. All the weights of the bags are his work." Go to Proverbs chapter 20. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 14. "It is not, or it is nothing. It is not, saith the buyer. But when he is gone his way, then he boasted." Go with me to chapter 21 here. Chapter 21, look at verse 6. "The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a vanity, tossed to and fro of them that seek death." And go with me to Proverbs chapter 22, look at verse 28. 28 and 29. Remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. Seest thou a man diligent in his business, he shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. And of course, lastly, look at Proverbs 23 and verse 10. Proverbs 23, verse 10. Remove not the old landmark, and enter not into the fields of the fatherless. Verse 11, for the Redeemer is mighty, he shall plead their cause with thee. Now let's jump back to Proverbs chapter 20, look at verse 23 there once again. And it says, diver weights are an abomination unto the Lord, and a false balance is not good. As we look at all those verses, it covers a lot that deals with business ethics and practice, and guidelines for conducting our transactions or dealings with another folks. Perhaps it would be with, as we look at this, we get the insight from the Lord who gave it to Solomon. As we look at Solomon, he did much for Israel. You talk about a king that expanded Israel's borders and boundaries and had a tremendous influence and made Israel a powerful nation and put Israel on the map as one of the most powerful nation out there. And so with wisdom from the Lord, Solomon was able to improve Israel's army. He did much to improve Israel's army. Not like what we're doing right now. We're decreasing our military strength and our influence in the world. But Solomon did much with Israel's army, expanded the royal court, expanded Israel's borders as well. Not only that, but he had gifts and tributes he received from other nations as part of their alliance. He had land and sea trading system with an army, enabled ships to protect his assets and routes. He built the temple of God, put Israel on the map as a powerful nation. Many came to Solomon to hear of his wisdom, and not only that, how he ran things as well. Remember the Queen of Sheba that came and visited him and wanted to see not only just, she heard of his wisdom, but she wanted to see with her own eyes how he did things. The alliances that he made, his servants, the wisdom that comes out of his mouth, the people that he worked for King Solomon. And she came to see all that, she witnessed all of that, and she was amazed by all of this. But we can look at Solomon's credential, if you will, and we can say this man knows how to conduct business. He knows how to do dealings with people, with other nations. He knows how to govern things when it comes to transactions, when it comes to other nations. Solomon is an expert on that. Can we agree that Solomon is an expert on foreign policies, transaction, businesses? He is an expert on that, and that only came from the Lord. That wasn't his to begin with. That came from God. All that wisdom came from the Lord. But he is an expert on business, and he's an expert on getting some insight as far as ethical practices and things like that. And, you want to go to an expert when you want to get an insight about something. If I wanted to have someone work on my car, I want someone to know that what's wrong with my car. I want to be able to take maybe a half an hour, look at it, and say, this is what's wrong with your car, and this is what you need to fix it. I don't want someone that says, give me about a day to be able to take a look at it. While it's sitting there, and they might get to it, and they do something like it's on the side, but it's not their primary thing that they do. No, I want an expert. I want an expert working on my vehicle. I don't want some guy that does it on the side, and perhaps he might fix it, or he may even make it worse. You ever hired someone that you thought was an expert will work on your house, and you realize I should not have hired that person at all? Yes, everybody's been there like, wow, that was a huge financial mistake. Never call that person again. We've all been there. We've all been there. But when it comes to business, transaction dealings, Solomon has some insight here, and some things that we can glean from regarding this. And we're talking about business ethics. We're not just talking about, business owners, conducting business with other people. We're talking about just our daily transaction, day-to-day affairs that we have, dealings that we have, interactions that we have with people. We're talking about ethics, that system of moral principles for regulating the actions and manners of people in a society. We're talking about that moral principle that guides us as we conduct business with other people. You know, how do we deal with other people? How would you, when I just think about how, when it comes to selling something to somebody, you know, how would you go about selling that thing? Perhaps you might have a refrigerator at home you're trying to get rid of. Perhaps you might have some clothes, some shoes, or perhaps you might sell things at your own. You know, how are you going to conduct that business and that practice? When you're selling it to somebody who's going to pay cash for it. Just one area, just one thought when it comes to business and things like that. But when it comes to conducting our daily business, our transaction with others, our dealings with others, God has some moral principle. God's word has some moral principle for us to follow, doesn't it? And look at all these verses, we'll bring it all together here. But let's look at some moral principles or ethics when it comes to conducting business with others. I believe when it comes to our transaction, our dealings with others, there are some things we got to practice, don't we? And one of those things I see is that we ought to practice honesty. Honesty, the state of being free from deceit, untruthfulness, sincere, morally correct, virtuous. We've already read this, but I'm going to read this to you. In Proverbs 11, verse 1, a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. Proverbs 16, verse 11, a just weight and balance are the Lord. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 6, the getting of treasures by a lying tongue is vanity, tossed to and fro of them that seek death. So as we look at this, we got to realize when it comes to conducting business, when it comes to our dealings with other people, perhaps other business owners or whatever, our daily interaction with other folks, we got to practice honesty, don't we? We can't have a false balance. We cannot practice things in a dishonest way. He used diver weights and he used balance as an example for us. I think it was interesting. In this river valley near Pakistan, they discovered an ancient weighing scale that dates back as far as I believe 2000 BC. And of course, anybody ever seen an ancient weighing scale or know exactly what it looks like? Does everybody know what it looks like? It's just a crossbar, right? That has strings, and there's a plate that may hang from the bottom of each one, and then it sits on top of a fulcrum that it balances. Anybody remember that? If you go to the courthouse, you'll be able to see that. They'll have a scale there speaking about justice and all that. But that's the ancient scale that they have. You know, it's not like today. It's all, you know, some of us have scales in our bathroom. You know, you might have an analog scale where you step on it, the dial spins, that has numbers on there. And there's a line on that scale that tells you how much you weigh. You know, you step on that, it spins. Sometimes it keeps on spinning. You're kind of embarrassed because it keeps on going. And then it finally says, you're like, all right, I didn't have to see that. Don't need that type of negativity in my life today. And, you know, as even worse is you have a digital scale. And digital scale, I mean, it could read so much more. You step on that scale, not only does it tell you your weight, but it could tell you, I think with a blood pressure, it could tell you your body mass index, your BMI, meaning your height to your weight, you should be weighing this much. If you're over that, you're just fat, is one thing we say, or overweight. And so, you know, you don't need to know that much about your life as well. I remember just looking at I always read a Garfield comic strip as a kid. And I always go to libraries and we get some more comic books about Garfield. I remember Garfield would always he has to go in for his appointment with a vet. And of course, you know, she would have him step on the scale to weigh him, and he refused to step on that. And of course, they finally got him on there, and the scale just, in one comic scene, the scale just keeps on going really fast. And he's standing there looking disappointed. And then it keeps on going to the next strip, and then next thing you know, on the next one, it says on there, you were just too fat. Step off. I remember the next scene, he picks it up and just throws it at John and walks away. And but we're not talking about that type of skill. The skill used back in ancient days, different empires have used it. They have used it. And they often use stone as a way to be able to measure, as a fixed point of reference. And the stone, for example, you can have a 1 pound stone, a 3 pound, a 5 pound, whatever, it's a 10 pound stones. And they'll, if you were doing a market back in those days, you might want to be able to have they would have a scale right there in the open market, that ancient scale, that weighing scale. And you might say, okay, I want 10 pounds of rice. And so they would go over here and they find a stone that perhaps is 10 pounds. They pick it up, they put it on one side, right? What do they have to do on the other side? Put the rice in there. So they began to scoop that. All right, you got it. All right. And then you can see the rock on the other side, the 10 pound rock going up. And until eventually where it balances it out, doesn't it? And so the way the seller says, okay, here's a 10 pound rock, here's 10 pound of your rice, please pay me. And the buyer pays and they go their way. But the seller can rig that scale, can't they? Because everybody take a wild guess how they can rig that? No, not just with smaller stones. You're heading in the right direction. Huh? No. What do you think they can do to be able to cheat someone? The sign on that stone may say 10 pounds. And the person buying might say it might be 10 pounds. But you know what they can do to that rock? They can chip it. They can chip it away to where the person, it might say 10 pounds, but when they actually weigh it, might be 8 pounds. The person believes he's getting 10 pounds of rice. Is he getting 10 pounds? No, he's getting 8 pounds. Is it a balanced scale? Is it a just scale? Is he being honest in his dealings? No, and the truth is many folks back in those times, they would do that. They would ruin those scales. They would be dishonest in their dealings to where folks were getting cheated out of what's actual value. And so here we're looking at this principle of being honest, practicing honesty in our dealings, in our transactions, in our business with others. As crazy as you look at these ancient scales, you have different empires that have used it. You have people in China have used it back in the days. You had the British Empire, they've used it as well. The Roman Empire was the one that helped it to be more precise because they didn't use stone, they used metal. It was a lot harder to be able to chisel metal out than stone. It was a lot harder to be able to cheat people when they came and used that system. And so they help a little bit more with just the precisions of things. But as we look at these principles here from Proverbs chapter 11 and Proverbs chapter 16, you got to realize a false balance, it says a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. It's being dishonest. It's something that God, of course, he does not like. He has hatred for a false balance. It's deceiving people. It's being dishonest in our practice of things. And not only that, but he says here in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1, it says a false balance is an abomination of the Lord. That's the first thought. And he adds more to that in the latter part of the verse. Proverbs 11, verse 1. A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight. And Proverbs 16, verse 11, a just weight and balance are the Lord. Now, the word just there, talking about fairness, talking about equal, talking about being frank, being equal with someone. You know, not only should we practice honesty, but we should probably practice fairness, shouldn't we? In our dealings with other folks, we ought to practice being fair. You ever heard what is the fair market value for that item? We've all heard that. Let's say, for example, I have this hymn book. And let's say I bought it at a great deal for $8 a piece, which we did. And let's say we're selling it on Facebook, we're selling it on Amazon, we're selling it on Craigslist. And we put this up here. And if I were to say, this hymn book is a great hymn book, it's the rarest of its kind, and it is a very valuable, and it's very expensive, and you can buy this now for, I'll give you a fair value, you can buy it for $29.99. Is that fair value? I could see maybe 15, but I believe it costs, what, $14.99 for this? I could see maybe $12. I could see maybe, okay, this, it has some scratches on it. I might have drawn on it since I was bored. It's sometimes we don't practice fairness because, you know what, we're all tempted to have just a little bit more, isn't it? But a just weight is his delight. The Lord is an example of fairness. He's not only a God of love, but he's also a God of wrath and judgment. He's not only a God of war, as the Bible says, but he's also a God of peace. There is justice to God. There's fairness, there's equalness to him. And he's a perfect example. And it's no wonder he says, but a just weight is his delight. So not only can we practice honesty, but we can practice fairness, and we can practice things legally. Go to Proverbs chapter 22 and look verse 28 here. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 28. It says, remove not the ancient landmark which thy fathers have set. Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men. Go with me to chapter 23, verse 10. We read this. I want you to look at it. Remove not the old landmark, and enter not into the fields of their fatherless. For their Redeemer is mighty. He shall plead their cause with thee. Now, as you look at these phrases that you see, remove not the old landmark, the ancient landmark, it's interesting because I'm just going to use the pulpit as my example. And this is something that's still being practiced today. Back in those times, they had those ancient landmarks are used to distinguish border lines, property lines, and I'm trying to think, property lines, border lines, and someone's field. It helps distinguish those things. And you know what? It's not like what we have today. Today, to help us be able to distinguish our property line, we have probably a map from a surveyor or what's that person that goes out and does that property line? What are they called? Anybody know? Survey. Thank you. So you might have someone that comes out. The survey guys come out and they assess your property, right? And they draw a chart, they do a map, they do measurement. They're like, all right, this is your property line. This is your from here to here. This line here is imaginary line. This is yours. The back over there is yours. Over here is yours, and then the front here is yours. That is your property, which is great. And you might even put up a fence to be able to find it more distinguishable. Well, they don't have that back in those days. Not someone could put up a nice fence or post and all that. You know what they would do? They would put piles of stones in the middle of a field. They would just gather stone and just pile it all up. They'd pile up here. Several feet later, they'll pile up another bunch of stones over here, or a rock, or they might erect a simple post with a stick and a bunch of rocks together. And you'll see that from one point to another point to another point. You know what that is? That's their landmark. That's the ancient landmark that they would have. That is what defines their property, their borders, as that's what other people would recognize. Hey, you cross that, you're illegally going to someone's property. You're going to someone's property. And it's interesting, I remember seeing this for the first time, I think it was in Afghanistan. We were riding in our Humvee and we thought there was a big pile of rock in the middle of nowhere. And we panicked. We thought it might be a bomb. We thought it might be seriously a bomb, but all of us had to go and check it out. We went and checked it out, and it was literally just a pile of rock in the middle of nowhere. And then we see another one way over there, and we saw another one way further over there. And we were wondering what it was. But you know what it was? It was some farmer. That was his property line. That belonged to his. But you know what people can do? They can move it. They can move that pile of stone. Perhaps, for example, here, you have two parties. Perhaps they own different. One is trying to buy a property from the other guy, and they made a deal. The guy's like, "All right, this area here is yours. I'm selling it to you. Yeah, you have this. Go ahead and mark it." Guess what that seller, that guy, could do? When that guy's not looking, perhaps that night, he might come and move those pile of rocks just a little bit. He just has a little bit more now. It's his now. Those landmarks, he can move it, can't he? Not only that, but perhaps 5 months from now, he noticed that the guy who's selling, he doesn't even come all the way out here. He just stays way over in that little corner of his house with his family. He's too busy with family to go worry about all of this. Guess what he begins to do? Come at night. And he moves it a little bit more. He's been told to remove not the ancient landmark. He's been told to not do things like this, to practice things like this. And he does it. And he has a lot more property now, doesn't he? Those ancient landmarks are legal binding. Those ancient landmarks, it may not seem much, but it matters legally. It matters in the eyes of those that have seen it put up. It matters to those that have bought it and says, I paid for it, it is mine. It's like if you were to have a fence post put up near your house, then all of a sudden your neighbor decides to come over, invite his friends over to your side, they're grilling, they're having a picnic, they're having a great time, and you're wondering, what are you doing on my side? What are you doing on my property? What rights did you have to come over and do what you did? And in your mind, you're seeing all of this, and you're like, honey, I'm going to go grab my gun while you call the police and the ambulance. It's like they have no business being over on this side, did they? That's a line. That is your property. That is a fence that is fixed and wants to keep people out, isn't it? And here, the direction for us says, remove not the old landmark or the ancient landmarks. You and I, in our dealings with other people, in our business, in our transaction with others, there are things that we can practice. We can practice being honest, we can practice fairness, but we can also do our practice with things legally. And I understand the times that we're living in and the laws that we have. Trust me, we have a ridiculous amount of laws out there. Some of them shouldn't even be laws at all. At all. But as Christians, there are things we can still do. They'll be an example, be a light to other folks by being honest, by being fair, by trying to do our best to do things legally. There are things that we can do. And you know what? With folks that don't practice those things, they're causing harm to themselves is what they are. Because eventually it will catch up. Somebody's going to find out you were dishonest. Somebody's going to find out, man, that wasn't fair at all. I can't believe that. I'm not going to deal with that person going forward. Or somebody like pushing that line of being illegal or doing illegal things. So when it comes to those things, it's going to come back. And I believe there's a phrase here. Let me see if I can find it in our verses here. Give me a moment here. Proverbs chapter 21, verse 6, the getting of treasures by a lying tongue is vanity, tossed to and fro of them that seek death. No, it's going to come back together. That is not the path you want to go when it comes to business ethics and practice. This is not the way to go about. There are ways to go about doing these things that will cause you not worry about if someone's going to come back and get you. Someone's going to come and get angry because you sold them something that was not fair, that was not of good value, that was not honest. And it's going to protect us from those things as we conduct our business with other folks. And I'll tell you what, there are many folks here in our community that are great business owners. Trust me, they're great business owners. We've met many of them. And many of them are just looking folks that are just honest with them, that are ready to work, that are hard workers, that are just ready to just put in work. But you know they're having a hard time finding folks that are honest, that are true, that are sincere and genuine, that are ready to just go to work and work. You know, they're looking for people that have those qualities in them as well. Business owners here in Dark County are looking for folks that has some sort of moral qualities about them. Are they honest people? Do they treat others fairly? Are they the type that are doing things legally and not trying to just do a whole bunch of things under the table and then legally handling things? I say that because I witnessed a lot of things done illegally here at the church. I'm not talking about you all. You're fine. You're safe in this. I'm talking about when I'm here throughout the week, there's people that are parked out there and they conduct business that shouldn't be done here. I'm talking about people that would park their vehicles over here. I'm thinking I could see all of that. I'm talking about folks that that would just openly, and I have to chase them away. Don't do that stuff here. Get that stuff off this property. You know, and it's, you see it quite a bit. And it seems like sometimes people have no, there's no moral conscience in it. Immoral, thank you. There's none to it. It's like there's no conscience. There's no the thought of just doing something wrong. It's just, it's not a thought. It's more like, who cares? Who cares? What? Oh, that's none of your business what I do. You ever heard that from people? And sometimes you are the police yourself when you're trying to just enforce things that are right. But I'm very thankful the Lord helps us to just have some principle, moral principle that guide us when it comes to dealing with others or business, the things that we practice. You know, practice honesty, practice being fair, practice doing things legally, and understanding some things about the way we're supposed to do things. Because there's a generation that's rising up that has no moral virtue, no principle in which they guide them. They do things heavily based on their emotions. It was interesting last night. Our guest speaker, he mentioned that 80% of people make decisions based on their emotions. And that only 16, I think was it 60, 14 or 16% is what you're saying, make decisions based on logic. So as you can see, it's a small portion when people are making their decisions logically. They're thinking things through, rationalizing it, and then they make an executive decision. All right, this is what I'm going to do. And then there are folks that make things based on emotions. Ooh, that's nice. I'm going to buy that. Ooh, you ever walk past the store aisle as you're checking out? How much stuff is there for you to look at? How much stuff is there? You have it's tailored to everybody because the marketers understand this is what's going to attract people. Sight is going to attract it. Nice things going to attract it. They set all those things out for a reason. Right by the checkout aisle. And how many of us were like, yeah, I'm grabbing a mint. You know, it's a mint. Or, yeah, it's a soda. I need a soda. Or, you know, like my kids, candies. We have that one. You know, and it's all there. It's all there. And I thought it was interesting the way he presented that. And it's absolutely right about that. You know, there's a small group of folks that makes decisions logically or rationalize things, and there's folks that make decisions based off emotions. And you know, we as Christians, there are ways for us to be able to make decisions. You know, one is you go through your day. You know, we have to look at God's word as our guide. You know, are we doing things right? And yes, the Lord influences through emotions, through His word, through people, through many things will help us to guide us in life. But we have to use this as our fixed point of reference. You know, the reason I do things is, well, the Bible talks about doing this. And I find a great principle, and that's why we do things that way. We just don't do things just because we felt it's the way to do it. We do things because, you know what, I learned something from the Bible. And that's what I'm going to use as my fixed point of reference. That's what I'm going to use as my guideline as I conduct my business with people, as I exchange and sell or buy, whatever. And this has to be our fixed point of reference. This has to be our guideline for how we go about and do things. You know what? Only the Lord can help us, because every one of us can be tempted to be dishonest, to not be fair, perhaps do things a little bit illegal. All of us can be tempted to do all those things because we can have just a little bit. Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for your word. And just some insight here regarding business ethics and decisions and our dealing with others. Lord, I pray you help us be folks that just practice things honestly, that are fair with other folks, that are doing things according to your word. And Lord, I pray you give us some wisdom to be able to just navigate all that. It's a difficult world. It seems like it's more difficult each day. But I pray, Lord, that you would just help us through those things. Thank you so much for your word, and thank you for the wisdom that we find in it. Thank you for helping us to be able to see things that we can work on, the things that we can attempt to do to be able to live for you. Be with us now, Lord, in this prayer. In Jesus' name. It's all.